You didn't even realize it. But the moment you pulled your energy back, something shifted inside them. They're watching now, quietly trying to understand how you became harder to read. And the truth is, they didn't expect you to notice what you noticed. There's an energy here of connection that once felt easy, almost effortless. I keep seeing this image of 3 figures, raising cups like everything felt light natural, maybe even playful between you. There was comfort in the dynamic, a sense that things would continue the way they always had. But something changed the moment you stopped giving the same reaction. The moment you chose yourself, or chose silence, or simply chose not to chase. Now we see this shift, almost like someone realizing the absence of warmth. The image of 2 people passing the window feels important here because what was once ignored is now impossible for them not to notice. There's this quiet awareness growing, this sense that they may have taken something for granted. And now they're trying to figure out how to move closer again, without exposing how much they actually feel the distance. But underneath all of this, there is emotional hesitation. I keep being drawn to the image of a crowned figure above restless water. Someone here is trying to appear composed, controlled, but internally there's a lot they are not expressing. It feels like they are thinking very carefully about how they present themselves, because revealing too much would mean admitting that your recent shift affected them more than they expected. Something about what you did, even if it felt small to you, changed the emotional balance. And now their intentions are slowly surfacing in ways they didn't plan. Let's take a deeper look at what they're really feeling, and why your energy created this reaction. And what's beginning to shift now is movement, but not the confident, straightforward kind they usually rely on. I keep feeling this restless energy around the image of a knight rushing forward with a wand. Except something is off in the timing. It's like they want to act, they want to reach out, they want to regain control of the situation. But they're hesitating because your reaction is no longer predictable. You did something that disrupted their usual rhythm. Maybe before they knew exactly how you would respond, exactly how much attention to give, exactly how long they could stay silent before you would bridge the distance. But now there's uncertainty, and that uncertainty is creating urgency inside them. This energy feels impulsive beneath the surface, almost like they are going back and forth between wanting to come forward quickly and wanting to hold back, so they don't appear too affected. Because if they move too fast, it exposes how much they've been thinking about what changed between you. And they are very aware that the shift started when you stopped feeding the dynamic the same way. There is a sense that they are watching for the right moment, trying to calculate their next move. But emotionally, they're not as steady as they appear. The control they once felt is slipping slightly, and it's making them act more carefully than usual. Something is building here, a desire to respond, to close the distance, to test whether the connection still has the same access to you. But now they're realizing they may need to approach differently. And this is where things start to reveal what their true intentions actually are. Because the next actions they choose will say more than their words ever could. And what is becoming clearer now is that this situation was never only about attention. It was about value. The moment you stopped overextending, stopped offering the same level of emotional availability, something shifted in how they perceive the connection itself. It's almost like they are beginning to realize what was always quietly present. Something steady, something consistent, like something carefully nurtured over time that they may have overlooked. There is a growing awareness here of what truly matters, almost like seeing the bigger picture after focusing too long on small distractions. The energy feels like someone recognizing the stability that was always there, something reliable, something that had the potential to grow. something that required patience to truly appreciate. And now as the dynamic changes, they're starting to understand that what you gave was not something easily replaced. Your shift is revealing where real effort needs to happen. Because when something has been gently built piece by piece, it becomes obvious when that presence is no longer as freely given. There is a quiet realization forming about long-term potential, about emotional investment, about what is truly worth holding on to instead of taking for granted. What they are beginning to understand is that consistency has power. And the moment you redirected that energy toward yourself, the balance changed. Now they are faced with a choice whether to step forward with something more genuine or risk losing something that once felt secure, simply because they assumed it would always remain. And this realization is only the beginning of what they are now questioning internally. Because awareness often comes before action, and that questioning runs deeper than they want to admit because underneath the surface, they are not just noticing your absence, they are feeling disoriented by it. There is something here about them, realizing they were moving through this connection on autopilot, assuming the emotional thread would always be there, assuming they could drift in and out without truly losing their place. But now that thread feels harder for them to find. It is almost like looking up at a sky full of scattered light and not knowing which point to follow first. That is the part they are not saying out loud. Your shift did not only make them value you more, it exposed how much of their emotional certainty was quietly built on your consistency, your warmth, your willingness to keep the energy flowing. So now there is this inner feeling of being slightly ungrounded. Even if they appear calm from the outside, they may be trying to act normal, trying to minimize it. But internally they are realizing they cannot read the situation the way they used to. And for someone who was comfortable keeping things light, social or easy to access, that loss of orientation matters more than they expected. It is forcing them to feel the gap more honestly, and that is where their real intentions begin to rise. And the reason this is affecting them so deeply is because they are starting to see that the emotional distance was never as manageable as they told themselves it was. They may have convinced themselves they could keep things half open, half felt like someone standing near the water, but never fully stepping in, offering just enough to keep the connection alive without having to name what it really meant. But now even that feels upside down. The way they used to interpret your energy, your openness, your emotional availability no longer fits, and it leaves them feeling strangely exposed. There is a quiet discomfort here around vulnerability, around what happens when a feeling they kept contained in a careful cup starts spilling into awareness anyway. So beneath the confusion, there is also avoidance. Not because they do not feel anything, but because feeling it honestly would require them to admit that the connection held more emotional weight than they were prepared to carry. Your shift has removed the cushion they were leaning on. It has taken away the easy access point, the emotional safety net, and now they are left face to face with what they were not ready to process before. That is why their energy can feel inconsistent or delayed. They are not only reacting to your absence, they are reacting to the realization that they may have been receiving more love, more softness, more emotional grace than they ever fully acknowledged, and now they cannot unsee that. And somewhere inside that realization, there is also an awareness of the care that was quietly surrounding them the entire time. A kind of steady presence that did not demand recognition, but offered comfort in ways they may have grown used to, without truly acknowledging. It feels like they are now recognizing how safe the connection allowed them, to feel like someone who had been resting under something stable and rooted, only noticing its protection once they step away from it. The emotional support you gave may have felt natural to you, but to them it created a space where they could soften without fully admitting they were doing so. There is something almost humbling in this moment for them. Realizing that what you offered was not just affection, but patience, understanding, and a grounded sense of emotional security. They may now be reflecting on how easily they received that warmth, like someone holding something valuable close to the heart without fully grasping its worth until it is no longer being given so freely. And this awareness is beginning to shift how they see you, not as someone who will always remain available, but as someone whose presence carries real substance, real emotional stability, something that cannot simply be assumed or replaced. It is quietly challenging the emotional distance they tried to maintain, because now they are seeing the connection as something more nurturing than they allowed themselves to admit before. And this is exactly why their usual instinct to rush forward or act on impulse is being slowed down. Because now they are realizing that what stands in front of them is not something casual or easily replaceable. There is a quiet recognition forming that this connection carries a kind of grounded warmth. The kind that does not chase or demand, but simply exists with quiet confidence. It feels like they are beginning to understand that your energy was never chaotic or uncertain. It was steady, like something deeply rooted, something that continues to give even without needing constant reassurance in return. That awareness makes them more careful now, because they can sense that what you offer is not just attraction or excitement, but emotional safety, a softness that holds real value. It is almost like watching someone hold something precious close to the heart, realizing too late how much comfort it provided. Their hesitation is not only fear of losing control, but fear of mishandling something, nurturing something that has the potential to grow slowly and consistently over time. So now their actions may appear slower, more thoughtful, because they are beginning to understand that not everything meaningful needs to be rushed. Some things require presence, patience, and genuine intention. And part of what is slowing them down is the realization that they may not have invested their energy as wisely as they believed before. There is a quiet self-reflection happening, almost like someone replaying past decisions and noticing where effort was inconsistent, where attention was divided, where they may have convinced themselves that time would simply fix what they did not actively nurture. Now there is a subtle discomfort in recognizing that something meaningful was allowed to drift into uncertainty, not because the connection lacked potential, but because they hesitated to fully show up when it mattered most. It feels like an awareness of missed timing, like someone looking back and seeing moments where they could have spoken more honestly, acted more intentionally, or expressed more clearly what they were feeling. That pause, that delay, that tendency to hold back is now becoming more visible to them, almost like noticing something left unattended for too long. There is a sense that they are beginning to question their own choices, recognizing that the emotional distance they created did not actually protect them the way they assumed it would. And this realization carries a quiet weight, because they are starting to understand that genuine connection requires presence, not just potential. And because they are beginning to recognize that distance did not give them the clarity they expected, there is a quiet emotional dissatisfaction surfacing that they can no longer ignore. What once felt easy to keep casual now feels strangely empty, like reaching for something familiar and realizing it no longer carries the same fulfillment. It is almost as if they are looking at the options in front of them and noticing that what once seemed exciting or distracting now feels scattered, less meaningful, like too many choices that do not truly satisfy. There is a subtle sense of emotional confusion here, but it is productive confusion, the kind that makes someone pause and question what they really want instead of continuing to drift. They may start withdrawing slightly from superficial interactions or situations that once kept them comfortably distracted, because now those spaces feel noisier than before, like too many emotional signals overlapping at once. Something inside them is quietly comparing what felt genuine with what simply filled time. And that comparison is creating the first honest shift in direction. They are beginning to see that the connection they placed on hold may have held more emotional truth than the other options they allowed to occupy their attention. And as that comparison becomes clearer, it begins to shake something they thought was stable inside themselves. What once felt manageable now feels harder to justify, almost like the structure they built around their emotional distance is starting to crack under the weight of what they are finally allowing themselves to see. There is a moment here where denial becomes difficult to maintain, where the realization they tried to postpone arrives suddenly, like a flash that exposes everything all at once. The comfort they thought they had in keeping things undefined no longer feels secure, and this creates an inner disruption they did not anticipate. It may feel intense for them, like something shifting faster than they expected, because the truth they avoided is now asking to be acknowledged. The emotional walls they relied on to stay in control are not holding the same way anymore. And when that happens, reactions can become more honest, more immediate, even if they try to appear composed on the surface. This is the stage where avoidance becomes unsustainable, where what was hidden starts pressing upward, like something breaking through a rigid surface. The realization that they may have underestimated the depth of this connection is becoming impossible for them to ignore. And as the intensity of that realization settles, there is also a quiet attempt to regain emotional composure, as if they are trying to steady themselves while everything inside feels less predictable than before. What is becoming visible now is not just reaction, but a desire to approach the situation with more emotional maturity than they showed previously. It feels like someone slowly sitting back into themselves, holding their feelings more consciously, recognizing that reacting impulsively will not restore what they now understand holds deeper meaning. There is an effort here to respond, rather than escape to contain emotions without denying them, like someone carefully holding a full cup while navigating uncertain ground. The direction forming here suggests that the emotional turbulence is not pushing them away, but encouraging them to become more honest about what they feel and what they may want to repair or protect. There is a growing awareness that the connection requires sincerity, not avoidance, and that control does not come from distance, but from emotional clarity. This shift suggests they are beginning to understand the difference between appearing unaffected and actually being emotionally steady. And as this understanding develops, their intentions begin aligning more closely with something real, something they can no longer pretend does not matter. And with that awareness settling in there is a gentle softening that begins to replace the tension, almost like something inside them is finally allowing emotion to move freely, instead of being held back or redirected. The resistance that once kept everything contained is loosening, and in its place there is a quiet openness forming, like someone extending a hand while still unsure exactly how it will be received. What they feel is no longer something they can easily compartmentalize, because the emotional current has already begun flowing, steady and difficult to reverse once acknowledged. There is a sense here of sincerity beginning to surface more naturally, not forced, not dramatic, but real in a way that feels emotionally honest. It is similar to realizing that what they have been holding back actually wants expression, like something overflowing gently from a space they once kept guarded. This does not necessarily mean immediate action, but it does show that the emotional truth is becoming more integrated within them, less fragmented, less avoided. The situation now carries a quieter kind of clarity, one that feels more grounded in genuine feeling, rather than confusion or defensiveness. And as this openness stabilizes, the possibility of emotional reciprocity begins to feel more natural than threatening, as if the connection itself is slowly becoming something they are more willing to meet with sincerity. And even as this openness begins to take shape, there is still a sensitive layer of uncertainty moving quietly underneath it, almost like emotions surfacing through a dream that has not fully clarified yet. What they feel is becoming more real, but also more vulnerable, and that can create moments where they question their own instincts, like walking a path where the light is present. But the full direction is still unfolding, step by step. This is not confusion in the same way. As before, it is more like emotional sensitivity, increasing, making them more aware of the consequences of what they choose next. There is something deeply reflective happening here, as if they are slowly learning to trust what they feel, rather than dismiss it. Old fears about misreading the situation or exposing too much of themselves may still appear from time to time like distant echoes, reminding them of why they once kept everything guarded. But those fears no longer feel strong enough to fully pull them backward. Instead, they are beginning to move more intuitively, guided less by avoidance and more by an inner pull they can no longer ignore. The emotional landscape feels softer, now more fluid, like something once hidden beneath the surface is becoming visible enough to acknowledge without rushing to define it too quickly. And beneath that soft unfolding, there is a quiet moment where they are no longer distracting themselves with possibilities that once kept everything comfortably undefined. Something inside them is beginning to simplify what they feel, almost like gently setting aside the noise of too many imagined outcomes and focusing on what feels emotionally true right now. The mind is no longer wandering in every direction, no longer trying to escape into hypotheticals or alternate versions of the story. Instead, there is a more intimate kind of honesty forming, as if they are sitting alone with their thoughts and realizing that one feeling keeps returning, no matter how many times they try to look elsewhere. This is where their inner world begins to reorganize itself. What once felt overwhelming or uncertain is now becoming more concentrated, like scattered impressions slowly settling into one clear emotional impression. They may not be fully ready to say everything out loud yet, but internally they are beginning to admit what holds real significance for them. There is a subtle shift from fantasy into emotional accountability, from wondering what if into quietly recognizing this matters. And that recognition is what is guiding the change you are starting to sense, even if they are still processing how to approach it in a way that feels safe for them. And as this realization concentrates into something more undeniable, there is also a deep internal recognition that the situation can no longer remain suspended in the same space it once occupied. What they once tried to keep undefined is now asking for a different level of honesty, one that challenges the version of control they believed they had. It feels like their perspective is quietly turning, almost as if the entire emotional landscape has shifted orientation, forcing them to see the connection from an angle they did not expect. The comfort of keeping everything loosely held is beginning to fall away, and with that, there is a sense that something fundamental inside them is being rearranged. There is a powerful awareness here that avoiding change is no longer possible without losing something meaningful. The emotional distance they once relied on now feels less protective and more limiting, like trying to hold on to an old position that no longer reflects what they truly feel. This shift may feel disorienting at times, like standing in unfamiliar territory where old assumptions no longer apply yet. There is also a strange clarity forming within that instability. What once felt safe in uncertainty now feels incomplete, and that realization is pushing them to reconsider how they want to show up, moving forward even if the process of redefining their role feels vulnerable. And within that vulnerability, there is also a growing urgency forming, as if once the truth became clear to them, it became difficult to simply sit still and pretend nothing had changed. Something inside is beginning to move more decisively now, like a thought that refuses to stay quiet any longer, or a realization that keeps pressing forward until it is acknowledged in action. The emotional clarity they are arriving at is not passive. It carries momentum, like someone feeling compelled to close the distance. Rather than remain in hesitation, there is a sense of mental resolve building, as if the confusion that once kept them paused has now sharpened into a clearer intention, even if they are still processing how to express it. Their internal dialogue is becoming more direct, more focused on what feels honest, rather than what feels safe. It is similar to feeling a sudden rush of courage after a long period of uncertainty, where the fear of misstepping becomes less powerful than the discomfort of doing nothing. What is quietly guiding this direction is the understanding that avoidance will only prolong something they are already emotionally invested in. And once that awareness settles in, hesitation begins to feel heavier than action, making it more likely that their energy starts moving with greater clarity and purpose. And as that clarity strengthens, there is also a subtle realization that the hesitation they once relied on is no longer supporting the version of themselves they are trying to grow into. It feels like recognizing that the tools or strategies they used before to maintain distance no longer create the same sense of stability. Almost like reaching for something familiar and noticing it no longer works the way it once did. There is a quiet awareness that real change cannot happen while holding on to the same patterns that kept everything safely contained. Internally, this may feel like loosening their grip on needing to manage every outcome, as if something inside is learning that control does not necessarily create the emotional security they believed it would. The urge to orchestrate everything perfectly begins to soften, replaced by a willingness to let the moment unfold more naturally, even if that means stepping outside of what once felt comfortable. It is similar to setting down an old way of protecting themselves and realizing that vulnerability might actually create more connection than distance ever did. There is a growing acceptance here that sincerity cannot fully develop when everything is kept guarded. And as that realization settles, the emotional space begins to feel more genuine, less constructed, as if something authentic is finally allowed to exist without being overly managed. And within that authenticity, there is also a quiet recognition that what they were once trying to hold on to may no longer reflect what truly fulfills them now. It feels like standing in a familiar space and realizing the structure they relied on no longer feels alive, in the same way almost as if something that once symbolized possibility now feels heavier than expected. There is an awareness forming that growth sometimes asks for release, not because something was meaningless, but because its role has already been completed. Internally, this can feel like acknowledging that certain expectations, plans, or imagined outcomes may have been built around who they used to be, rather than who they are becoming. The need to maintain appearances or preserve control over how everything unfolds begins to lose its urgency, as if the emotional truth is gently asking them to set something down that once felt essential. There may be a quiet grief in this realization, but also relief, like loosening the grip on something that required constant effort to sustain. What is becoming clear is that genuine emotional alignment cannot fully exist where there is still attachment to maintaining an illusion of stability. And as that understanding deepens, the resolution carries a softer honesty, one that allows space for something more authentic to take root without being constrained by what no longer feels true. And as this softer honesty settles in, there is also an invitation to see the entire experience through a gentler lens, almost like remembering that clarity does not always arrive through control, but through reconnecting with what feels quietly true inside. When attention returns to that inner light, the story begins to feel less like something that needed to be solved, and more like something that revealed what was already present beneath the surface. Sometimes the deepest understanding comes not from forcing certainty, but from allowing the heart to guide perception in a way that feels more compassionate toward both yourself and the other person. There is a sense here that this situation has been encouraging, a shift in perspective, one that asks you to trust what feels aligned rather than what once felt familiar. When emotions are viewed through the lens of love, even the parts that felt confusing or uncomfortable begin to show their purpose, like recognizing that growth often asks us to release old definitions of stability in order to experience something more genuine. In that space, understanding becomes softer, and the path ahead feels less pressured and more quietly supported. As this gentler perspective begins to take hold, there is also an encouragement to allow moments of lightness back into your emotional space, as if reconnecting with what feels natural and enjoyable helps everything move more freely again. When the heart has been carrying tension for some time, it can forget that ease is still possible, that not every step forward needs to feel heavy or uncertain. There may be a quiet sensitivity here around feeling responsible for outcomes, as though everything depended on careful timing or perfectly measured responses. Yet part of this emotional process is remembering that when you allow yourself to feel a little more open, a little more present, the energy around you begins to shift more organically. Sometimes clarity deepens when the mind is not trying so hard to control every variable, like noticing that things begin to align more naturally when you feel comfortable being yourself again. There is validation here for any part of you that has been feeling tired of overthinking or emotionally bracing for what might happen next. You are allowed to experience moments of relief even while things are still unfolding. And as this space of relief gently opens, there is a reminder that even the smallest sense of hope can quietly shift the emotional atmosphere, like something subtle beginning to flow where tension once felt stuck. You may notice that when your perspective softens, possibilities begin to feel less distant and more approachable. Almost like allowing a little trust back into the process helps restore balance internally. Releasing the pressure to predict every outcome can create room for something unexpected yet supportive to take shape. Hope here does not need to feel overwhelming or dramatic. It can simply be the quiet willingness to believe that not everything ahead needs to repeat the past, and that something meaningful can still unfold in ways that feel natural and reassuring. There is also a gentle pattern here that keeps returning, almost like the same quiet reminder appearing in different forms, encouraging a deeper trust in what already exists within you. So much of this journey has been guiding you back toward recognizing that love is not something you need to chase or force into being, but something that naturally reveals itself when you allow space for presence and awareness. Like returning to small mindful moments throughout the day, there is a sense that the more you reconnect with your own emotional center, the more everything around you begins to feel less complicated and more aligned. The same thread continues to surface that when you soften into your own truth, what once felt uncertain gradually begins to feel more possible in ways that feel genuine and steady. As everything begins to settle, there is a quiet sense that this experience has been gently guiding you toward a deeper awareness of yourself, almost like drawing closer to a place of inner clarity that was always present, but waiting to be acknowledged. Sometimes growth happens through simply noticing what feels true, without needing to force immediate answers, like allowing understanding to arrive in its own time. There is reassurance here that the process itself has meaning, and that every realization has been helping you move closer to a more conscious connection with what genuinely resonates, like a quiet presence offering perspective. This moment invites patience with yourself, trusting that the awareness you have gained will continue to guide your choices in a way that feels calm, steady, and aligned. As always, take only what resonates with your situation and gently leave the rest, because every journey unfolds in its own unique timing. If something in this reading helped you see things from a softer or clearer perspective, then it has already served its purpose. Thank you for spending this time with me and allowing me to share this space with your energy. I truly appreciate your presence here. If you feel guided, you are always welcome to return for future readings whenever you need a moment of reflection or reassurance. Take care of yourself and trust your inner rhythm.